My name is Tyler Winslow. I am the Director of National Affairs for the Wisconsin Farm Bureau. I handle all the national issues that come before Wisconsin Farm Bureau. I'm kind of the liaison between members and their members of the Wisconsin Farm Bureau and members of Congress and their U.S. senators. I also try to help schedule any kind of meetings that may have and provide information on things that are happening at the federal level. Today, we're going to go through what the Wisconsin Farm Bureau does in terms of the steps that we take when you go through putting together our policy book each and every year. When I talk to other Midwest farm bureaus across the area here, each one has their own kind of separate process they go through. North Dakota, their entire policy book revolves every 3 years. So if you have a policy in the book and it's not renewed within that 3-year period, it leaves the book. Contrary to Wisconsin Farm Bureau, once it's in our policy book, it stays there in perpetuity until it's taken out. So why is policy development important for Wisconsin Farm Bureau? And I'll start my presentation here. I'll share my screen. Okay, so policy development, why it's important here. So policy development with this Wisconsin Farm Bureau is a grassroots operation. So it comes directly from the county level and our members. It's not staff written, it's completely made up by members. And this is in contrary to a lot of other organizations within the state, especially ag organizations, the other organizations that represent businesses or other industries, where you may have an executive board that votes on different policies and whether they're going to support legislation at the state or local level or national level. In Wisconsin Farm Bureau, all our policy is developed by our members, and that derives or directs our state and national lobbyists. So it starts at the county level, and that process is beginning right now. And really, the process starts all the way back into April, when the Policy Development Committee originally meets, and we'll talk about this later, and they start talking about whether they're going to support different white papers that provide background information on issues that are emerging for the different counties to look at. So why it's important is because Wisconsin Farm Bureau is the preeminent ag organization within the state. We represent 48,000 different members, and they know when we meet with legislators at the state and federal level that because we're a grassroots organization, our members vote on our policy, that it is derived from our members, and it's not something that is easily changed or our board just comes up with. It's something that when we walk into the halls of the Capitol building in DC, in Madison, that they know that we're bringing the voice of farmers. So what policy development is not, is just because it goes into our state book or our federal book at the WFBF level, it doesn't mean that it automatically becomes state law. It goes through the process of getting into our book, and then our state lobbyists also work with our other partners in ag organizations to derive the priorities of what is going to be coming through the legislature each year. It also doesn't mean it's going to be the #1 priority with our organization. There are a lot of priorities that come through at the state level, but just because it's a new policy that you got into the book doesn't mean it's automatically going to be something that becomes our #1 priority as lobbyists, and that it's going to be addressed within the next legislative session. These typically become these issues that get into the book that are new typically take years to address, especially through the legislative session. As we know, it doesn't move very quickly. Okay, so it does what the Farm Bureau policy is, it gives us a directive. It gives the government relations team a directive to where our Farm Bureau members stand on a specific issue. So we have uh, policy on weight limits, DNR funding, animal abatement. These are all issues that come before, especially the state lobbyists, and give them directive of how our members feel about each issue and whether we can support or oppose different legislative policies that come forward from different members of the state legislature. So we have a number of different policies that come forward each year. So at the county level, we have ones that are just specific to that county government. That could be, Jackson County opposes all forms of animal moratoriums, or it could be that Outagamie County favors different weight limits on trucks. These are specific to county governments in what is important to them. Then we have the state policy ones. These are the ones that are important to state government, state agencies, and have a statewide impact. So these could be, again, weight limits, but these could be ones that are throughout the entire state. I have an example here of NR 151 with runoff management. There's also forms of renewable energy that we got a lot a couple of years ago. There's also ones on public education and rollover grants. So it could be any number of issues that are specific to state. The federal ones go through a similar policy or a similar procedure when it comes to policy, but they have an additional steps that we'll talk about later. And these are specific to federal issues like wolf delisting, trade, some tax implications, farm bill, a lot more nationwide issues, especially when it comes to dairy and dairy policy. And then there's internal ones. These are submitted directly to WFBF Board of Directors for consideration, and these are the ones that more have to do with the internal operations of the organization. Again, an example would be Farm Bureau should consider having culverts as a member benefit. These are ones that I do not see. The ones above you at the federal and state, those come into myself after they're passed by the individual counties. Those are forwarded to me by the district coordinators. And I put those all together into the state policy book where they're given to our policy development committee. And the county that passed those individual policies is also listed. So each year we have about 600 resolutions that come into the policy development committee. I aggregate those into the book with the county names into the appropriate sections of the book. And as we'll talk about throughout this presentation, the PD committee moves through those and either approves those or opposes those. And we'll talk about the different steps that means and some of the ways that if it is opposed, that it can still be brought back during the Monday business session of the annual meeting. The county ones are less, I don't see, they're less, they don't come in as often. And I think those are stayed within the counties, kept at the district coordinator level. So like I talked about earlier, policy development is important because Farm Bureau is so highly respected by local, state, and federal policymakers. It gives us, because our policies are so well thought out and go through such a rigorous process, it gives us tremendous credibility when we walk through the halls of the Capitol building, both in Madison and Washington. And we also are a nonpartisan organization, meaning that we can work with Democrats and Republicans, both sides of the aisle, because agriculture is important to everybody. There isn't anybody I have met that it doesn't eat. So it's important that agriculture remains nonpartisan and that we work with both sides of the aisle, because as we've seen at the congressional level, power switches between the different parties pretty often. And so we need to be able to work with both sides of the aisle. So this is the kind of the laid out process of how our policy development and the procedures and development process that it goes through. So as I started saying, the issue backgrounders is where we started in April. So our PD committee is all brought together in beginning of April, and we talk about the state lobbyists, and I come in, and Aaron at the local level. We all come in and talk about what are the issues that we see emerging that need greater policy descriptions within our state policy book. We see that there's always issues that come up every year where we just don't have policy that is specific enough to address legislative issues that have come forward. So we'll present those ideas to the Policy Development Committee and talk to them about, maybe we could see additional policy in this area and give them, they'll take that information and decide whether we need to have a white paper that talks about the information that we have and need in some of the policy directions that we could go to and some of the questions that need to be answered. Those white papers are put together and approved by the Policy Development Committee. The lobbyists, both at the state, national, and local level, me, myself, Aaron, Tim, and Jason put those together, and those are approved by the Policy Development Committee in late June. So we're getting close to that time period, and then sent out to the different counties for them to address those issues. Next level is when those policy development papers go out to the county level. They have their policy development committee meetings and annual meetings and approve those different policy resolutions that come forward. After those are approved, those are sent to me, as I said, and I aggregate those all together. And then the State Policy Development Committee meets again in late October this year. Usually it's early November. Whoops. And we go through all the individual state policy resolutions and federal resolutions and try to share our notes with the counties so they know what the conversation was like in a very transparent way. Then at the beginning of December, Wisconsin Farm Bureau has their annual meeting where we have caucuses for the different districts where they can talk about the different amendments they are going to bring forward, and we'll talk about that process later. And on Monday of the annual meeting is a business session where the voting members of our organization come in and we'll vote on different amendments that have been proposed from the counties and whether those will go into the state policy book. The issue background is, as I said, we usually have about 2 to 4 state topics for the government relations team to write about, and these different issues are emerging issues that we may not have enough policy on. So in the last couple of years, renewable energy has been a topic that has gained quite a bit of notoriety. It's something that our members didn't have a lot of specific policy on before over the last couple of years. They've added to a lot of it. And it really provides direction for our lobbyists so that they know where these issues should be going in the future and how they should be lobbying on different bills. Water quality standards has also been a hot topic, and dairy issues, specifically FMMO reformation at the federal level, has been a topic that's been highly discussed. So the State Policy Development Committee is made up of 9 Farm Bureau members, 1 from each district, board district, and those are nominated by the district directors. The Wisconsin Farm Bureau Vice President serves as the chair, and the YFA chair-elect serves on it, the P&E appointee, and the Dairy Committee chair also, and the VFA chair also serve on the committee. So it's a 13-member board, 14-member board, and we have a pretty good, I would say, slice of the organization where we have dairy committee members, we have members that are in different parts of the industry that not only serve vegetables, fruits, all kinds of different producers. And it's really a great opportunity to talk about what's happening in each individual district when it comes to policy that's important to them. These are the 2024 PD committee members. So now I want to talk about kind of the important steps that you need to go through to write a successful policy development policy. So, writing policy for Wisconsin Farm Bureau is not easy, and it takes a lot of work to get it through. It's something that we believe as an organization is important to the way our success happens at the legislative level. So writing good resolutions is important and guarantees that we are at the forefront of agriculture. And so I think with these kind of steps that we go through, it'll provide you with ways to be successful in writing a good resolution, and B, to get that into the book as well. So the first step is planning for input. So you've got your idea of, okay, well, I don't really support roundabouts. I don't want to see them in my neighborhood or in my county, and I'd really want Farm Bureau to oppose them. So what is the first step to doing that? You want to talk to your neighbors. You want to see, okay, are there other members that are having similar problems? Is this something that is widespread throughout the county? Is this an issue that not only has local implementation, but also can be taken to a statewide issue? Is this something that really the Farm Bureau needs to address, and that we don't have policy already in it? So talk to your neighbors, talk to other agribusiness leaders. Is this an issue for them that they're seeing as well? Talk to your Farm Bureau county leaders. Is this something that they believe should be addressed as well? And try to get constructive feedback about language that you're trying to impose. Is this something that really needs to be addressed? Is this something that is statewide? And, in truth, is this something that should be federal as well? Is this something that not only has statewide appeal, but it should be addressed at a federal level either as well? It's important to go through those steps to find out, okay, is this something that is just really, I'm seeing and nobody else really sees this as an issue? Or is this is this something that other people see as an issue that needs to be addressed as well? So when you look at the Wisconsin Farm Bureau policy book, you'll see something that every policy has. It's always written in a we support or we oppose frame. So it's we support better fencing for neighbors, or we oppose trucks riding on 2 axles weighing only 98,000 pounds. It's something that we always start with we oppose or we support, and we try to leave that to the language being as concise as possible. There isn't a we support because. It's a we support or we oppose. We don't need the explanation. That's something that can be left to the lobbyists to figure out, why we need this or that, or we can speak with the county directly why this is an issue. But the because or the explanations or the editorial portion of it is not something that we need to have in our policy development book. Also important to note that it's we support, we oppose, and do not put in 2024 Assembly Bill 24. But that's the part you want to, if you're going to put in an Assembly bill or a Senate bill, put in the year, but don't just put in we support Assembly Bill 24, because each legislative cycle, each 2 years, that Assembly bill number changes and is assigned to a different policy. So put in the year. So if you support Assembly Bill 24 from this last legislative cycle, it's important to put the year that it was that it was um, that it was put forward. So do not put just we support AB 24. Also, please try to keep other organizations out of the policy book. So putting a resolution forward that says we support the efforts of the Wisconsin Towns Association. Well, that's not specific enough to know what part of the efforts of the Towns Association you support. So if you support, the Towns Association's work on support or opposing roundabouts, that would be more acceptable. But please leave the Towns Association part out of the resolution part. You can also check out our resolution book at WFBF.com under the Government Relations tab, and it'll have a link there to the 2024 Farm Bureau Policy Book where you can take a look at it and see specific examples. So one of the new things that we did in this last policy development cycle was include the ability for counties to attach separate documents for the policy development committee to review. We've always asked for explanations as much as possible, but counties haven't taken advantage of it, and it'd be very difficult for policy development committee members who have any number of counties that they represent in their districts to remember the specific rationale for each resolution that was brought forward. So we created a system within the Google Drive, and I'll show you guys that in a little bit here, that shows how to attach state policy development committee documents so they can be reviewed by committee members. And let's see if we can get this to work here. It may be something that, because my computer froze before, so it may be something that is not going to work. Yeah, it looks like my computer is not going to be available to do that. So anyway, within the policy development committee framework, you have the ability as a county to put forward additional information. So that could be a link to a story, a local story in a newspaper that provides why this resolution is important, or you could have a whole written up explanation of why this is important. And if you give that to your district coordinator, they can upload that into the Google Drive for each county that has brought forward policy, and each policy resolution that's brought forward has an individual folder that documents can be put into for the policy development committee to review. So it's really a neat option for additional information for the policy development committee to review and provide context for each resolution. It's also important to remember that we're a general farm organization and that our policies should be focused on agriculture. It's great that you have an opinion on, the new maps or redistricting or what color the, a stop sign should be, but keep this focused on agriculture, and we want to be staying in our lane of focus. The resolutions about the number of districts that the other dairy organizations have is not important, and we should stay focused on our organization as well. And as I said, this should be focused on public policy. Internal matters go directly to the Wisconsin Farm Bureau Board. Those are things that I don't see and don't read, and stays specifically to the board. And so for the American Farm Bureau policy, I have a giant book that's probably, a couple hundred pages filled with federal policy that you can review at any point, and I am more than happy to send you a copy of that if you'd like to see one. But it is also very thick and has a lot of policy that is duplicated a couple times. So as we continue on our steps to writing good policy, we've gone through the action of talking to our neighbors. They believe that this is an issue that needs to be addressed. It has statewide implications, and they've worked with you to kind of reform the language. You believe that you have language that's concise. It's in a we support, we oppose format. So the next step would be taking that resolution to your County Farm Bureau Policy Development Committee meeting. In that committee meeting, you'll go through the steps of proposing the resolution and having the local PD committee vote on that and bringing that to the annual meeting that typically happens either at the same time or a separate meeting. And then that's brought forward. And if it's passed, that's when it's sent to me and I bring those all back together. But during those annual meetings, be prepared to speak on your resolutions. Try to think about the pros and cons. Think about, try to anticipate what kind of questions you're going to get on your individual policy. Is this something that people may oppose? Are there other reasons that people might oppose? Try to think about that and be prepared to have reasons why this is important and anticipate those questions that you might get. It's best to be prepared. It's best to be over prepared and have an understanding of what you're bringing forward and if there is going to be support or opposition and identifying those who may be opposed and reaching out to them beforehand to see if you can answer any of their questions before you actually get to the annual meeting. So if your resolution passes at the county level, that's when it's sent to me and I create the district coordinators submit those to me. A folder is created in the Google Drive for any additional supporting information that the county wants to provide. And those are able to be reviewed and take action. The committee then will meet, as I said, in late October of this year to go through all the resolutions and try to provide any kind of background information for the policy development committee that we can. Has this been submitted in the past? Has this something that we've talked about? Were there reasons why it was opposed in the past by the policy development committee? And can we give any kind of history and context to why we're seeing this come forward? Is this an issue that was submitted because of the white papers that were sent out earlier? And try to give as much information to the state policy development committee as we can so that they can make an educated decision on whether this should move forward or not. So you brought your resolutions forward, it passed the county level, it's gone to pass the policy development committee. If it passes the policy development committee, you don't have to do any other action. It's in the book, unless a county brings an amendment later that tries to remove it. We'll talk about how that whole situation works. But if your resolution doesn't get passed by the county or by the policy development committee, you have another option to bring it forward at the annual meeting as a amendment. So you can, if you decide to do that, try to talk to other counties to see if they can get if you can get other people to speak on the resolution in favor of your amendment. We usually get anywhere between 20 and 60 resolutions that come back that have passed the county and didn't pass the PD committee. It's important to gather support, and it's a similar process to what you went through when you try to get it passed at the county level. Talk to other counties to see if you can gather support from them and see if you can build kind of a coalition together of different counties and be prepared to speak to your resolution as well at the annual meeting. And if you can get a couple of speakers together, that's great. All that helps in persuading delegates to whether to vote for the resolution or not. As I said, if your resolution was recommended by the Policy Development Committee, it'll appear in the draft delegate policy document. It'll be highlighted in gray, and it'll be in there unless, like I said, unless there's an amendment from another county trying to remove it. It's in the book and does not need any additional information, or does not need any additional approval. But if, like I said, if there wasn't, there's the opportunity for amendments, and we'll talk about that kind of amendment process here. So if your resolution was not passed by the county, there is an opportunity to bring that back. We'll talk about that, but beginning here, we'll talk about the amendment process for if it was approved by the county, but not approved by the Policy Development Committee. So if your policy was not approved by the Policy Development Committee, you can bring it back with the approval of the county, and that is done. There is a Monday and Tuesday in late November, mid to late November, that a portal will open for about 48 hours. It opens up at 8 a.m. on Monday and closes at 8 p.m. on Tuesday. During this time, any amendment that passed the county, but was not approved by the PD committee, may be brought back for voting during the annual meeting business session on Monday. These amendments have to be reintroduced in the portal word for word that was passed by the county. We had a couple last year that were very close to word for word, and those require judgment calls by the Policy Development Committee, whether they meet the intent, the original intent of the county that passed the policy development, that passed the resolution. If it is not word for word, it is believed to have come in and not passed the county. So that would require PD action. And would have to be approved by the Policy Development Committee. If it comes into the county if it comes back into the policy and through the portal, passed by the county, and is word for word, it will appear as an amendment during the annual business day session on Monday. That does not need PD committee approval. So they passed, like I said, they passed the county. They don't, and you have that portal between 8 a.m. and on Monday and 8 p.m. on Tuesday. That doesn't need any PD committee approval, as long as it passed to the county and is written word for word as the original amendment. During the PD process, the PD committee has the ability to delete or alter language that was previously in the policy development book. The county may submit language that restores language that was deleted or altered by the PD committee. That would be, again, through the portal on Monday at 8 a.m. or between Monday 8 a.m. and Tuesday 8 p.m. This, again, does not need approval by the PD committee, as long as it is deleting or altering language, or is restoring language that was deleted or altered by the PD committee. The next option, if you are amending or eliminating new policy proposals adopted by the PD committee. So these would be proposals that are highlighted in gray that were supported by the PD committee, brought by a different county. You can bring an amendment from your county that would amend or eliminate the new policy proposals. Again, that would come through the portal between 8 a.m. Monday and 8 p.m. Tuesday. This, again, does not need approval by the PD committee. This last option would need approval by the PD committee. So if this is an amendment that did not pass the county, but you are bringing forward at the annual meeting, or an amendment that is not the same language or similar to what has previously passed the county, the amendment would need to be approved by the PD committee for action. While it traditionally, the PD committee reserves this action for emergency situations only. These are resolutions that come in because there has been an immediate change in the situation of agriculture. So this would be something that happened between the counties passing the counties passing resolutions and the PD committee meeting in the annual meeting within December. So within that time frame, if there was an immediate and emergency action that changed the agriculture industry, the PD committee would have the ability to approve a resolution that was needed. Again, historically, that has not happened, and the PD committee reserves this action only for emergency situations. The only amendments that can be offered during the delegate floor session on Monday of the annual business meeting were those that were submitted through the electronic portal between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Tuesday. Any of those, they also have to be ruled germane by the parliamentarian, that they have to be relative to those resolutions that have already been passed or are substantially similar to those that have been passed. We try to stay away from doing language on the floor, on the fly. It doesn't always happen with nearly 300 people in the room. Trying to do language on the fly can lead to some less than optimal results. During the morning business session, I think the caucuses have been moved to Saturday, I believe. I always get this time wrong. I think the caucuses are Saturday. This is the time when districts can meet together. The different counties can come together that are part of the different districts and talk about the amendments that have come forward. They'll have all the delegates get a electronic copy of the amendments that are coming forward. This is a change that happened within this last year. Previously, those were all posted on a board the night before on Sunday night, and delegates would either have to take a picture or just try to remember, what different amendments were coming forward. Now we try to get those all put together and emailed out to delegates beforehand so that they can have a copy and print out their own version if they want to have a paper copy instead. Again, the business meeting that typically happens after we have the financial update, I believe, and we go through the business meeting where all the delegates are seated, and we go through the debate for the Wisconsin farm policy for the next year. So as I talked about, we have the federal resolutions, and those go through a similar process. They go through a process where federal resolutions go through our process. They're approved at the county level. If they're approved at the county level, they go to the PD committee. If they're approved by the PD committee, again, they are not subject to any additional approval unless there's an amendment to remove them at the annual business meeting. There's also the option at the annual business meeting and through the amendment process of bringing federal resolutions through that. If those are approved by the delegates, they go through an AFBF policy development process, which is, in all honesty, very similar to what we go through at the state level. So if a policy is approved a federal policy is approved at our annual meeting, those are then sent over to AFBF. I send those over. Typically, so we have our annual meeting on Monday, the business session. I usually have a deadline of Wednesday to get those to AFBF. And then all 51 State Farm Bureau presidents meet in mid-December. So it's all the 50 State Farm Bureau presidents plus Puerto Rico. They come into DC and they are separated into five different subcommittees. Those are based on the federal book's five different topics. And so, one of the topics is national farm policy. There's another one on renewable energy, transportation. So they're all, they're all the Farm Bureau presidents are separated into subcommittees that work on those individual sections of the book. So when I submit the Wisconsin Farm Bureau federal resolutions, those are put into the different sub topics of the federal book, and the individual state presidents are then put into those five different committees, and those rotate each year. So President Olson was on subcommittee 5 this year that dealt with renewable energy and natural resources. I believe he'll be put into subcommittee 1 next year that deals with transportation issues, different industry issues. It comes to weight limits and some of the more social issues as well that are part of our book as well, elections, things like that. So when you go through those sessions, each Farm Bureau president has advocates for different parts. So if President Olson is on subcommittee 1, he's going to be advocating for Wisconsin resolutions. And if there's not a president from the state on the subcommittee that is considering a resolution from that state, and this was a change this year. Previously, staff was not allowed to speak, but this year, the different chairs of those subcommittees would ask the staff from those individual states to speak on the resolution of why this should be considered and why it's important. So, President Olson will serve on a different subcommittee. I always go to subcommittee 2, which deals with dairy policy. And this year I was able to speak in favor of the dairy revitalization plan and different dairy policy that Wisconsin brought forward. It was a welcome change to be able to advocate vocally for our resolutions in front of the entire committee. And I think it adds a lot more background information for the state presidents. Previously, if a state was not on that subcommittee, they found it very difficult to understand why a certain resolution was coming forward when they didn't have the background information, and AFBF staff wasn't able to provide that. So if it is approved by the subcommittee, at the end of the subcommittee's work, there's a committee of the whole. The committee of the whole then goes through each subcommittee's work, and that is where the different state presidents can bring amendments and ask questions of why certain amendments were included or not included. And it again provides another level of why the state presidents are important to this process, and they can advocate for their different resolutions at that point as well. After that process concludes in December, we have the AFBF annual meeting in January. That is typically in the middle of January in a different state each year. In 2023, there were 346 total delegates. Wisconsin had 3. So that is based on the number of delegates per state is based on the number of members within your state farm bureau. So Wisconsin Farm Bureau has 48,000 members. The largest state in Tennessee, with the largest state by number of members, is Tennessee. I believe they have 60 delegates or so. So they have quite a lot of power. So within those delegates, they're separated into different regions. So the Midwest, is the Great Lakes states and out to Nebraska, Kansas, and the Dakotas, and all the way out to Pennsylvania, Ohio, and the I-states. The West, the West out there, the South, and then the Northeast. And so the South, because of the number of members that the South in each Farm Bureau has, and that's tied to their insurance companies, they have more delegates than all the other three regions put together. And so I think if you were to think about how an organization would be put together, I don't think you would create an organization that had that much imbalance, but that's how we operate, and that's the way that the AFBF is set up at this point. So at the annual meeting, we again review the federal policy book and approve different policies to be in there, and each delegate votes on those. And if it's a close vote, we go to the clickers, just like we do at the state. And then there's also an option if we don't support one of the resolutions that was approved at the AFBF annual meeting, we have the option to dissent. That is a option that is rarely taken by any states. There's an official process for that to go through time frame and discussion on how that happens. That is a decision that is made by the WF Board of Directors. So I hope you found this process informative. It can be a bit challenging to go through all the different steps, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that people have as well.
Any questions for Tyler? Why you today, Tyler?
Just covered it all. Got everything that could possibly be thought of.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. As Tyler mentioned, we are getting into policy development season. So if there is an issue that you would like to bring forth, the first thing you should do is check with your friends, neighbors, fellow Farm Bureau members to see if there is some agreement with that issue, and then determine when your district policy development meeting is to maybe bring up that issue, but then also bring that forth at your county annual meeting. So if you are looking for the dates of those county annual meetings, if you are a voting Farm Bureau member, you will get a postcard in the mail telling you the date, time, and location of that meeting. Otherwise, we will have those posted at WFBF.com. So if you do have any questions following this, please feel free to give Tyler a call or send him an email. I'm sure he'd be happy to answer those for you. In addition, don't forget about our next Lunch and Learn, which will take place next month on July 3rd. We're going to be digging into our member benefits, and you will not want to miss this because we're going to be implementing a new process to access your member benefits. And so you'll want to make sure that you tune in and also learn about some of the new member benefits that we have coming out. So thank you again, Tyler, and thank you everyone for joining us. We hope you have a great month.